Kyle here from All Media Reviews. I'm wearing my Unexpect shirt. I found this. I haven't worn this in ages and thought about them. Here to do a review of a concert I went to last night. We did go to Ronnie Chang. I guess I could do a separate review for that last week, but that was older ago. But Sleepytime Gorilla Museum played in Minneapolis last night with a couple other bands. Jeez, this thing's falling apart. One of them, I'll talk about the band, the first bands first, and then get into SGM after that. One of them was this local band, relatively new local band called The Kind City. And The Kind City includes one of the members of Bubble Math, Blake Elbinson, I think his name is. But he's playing drums on this. He was a guitarist for Bubble Math. And also includes the main guy behind it is this guy named Marshall Bolan, who always was like I was associated with Bubble Math, but I was in a few other bands I liked. One of them is this band called Run at the Dog, who put this album out over 10 years ago. Also, which has Jenny Case, who's a solo artist, and some of the people I know. But anyway, they put out like an album or an EP back in 2020 that was like acoustic Christmas music that's on Bandcamp, but this is basically, I think, considered their debut album. It's called This. And I liked a lot of what they did, and I like hearing it today. It's sort of quirky art rock. I mean, melodic at times, using trumpet and other instrumentation. I mean, guitar and like keyboards, of course. The vocals are, I mean, they're not like too weird. They're not like unbelievably like in your face, but they do work at times. But I was just listening to this today. That song, The Offset, and then Plane Crash. Those two especially, there's a lot of this I really liked. And, this is a CDR that Marshall and a few other members, I guess, signed. The album is going to be maybe officially pressed, and you can go to Marshall's website, marshallbolan.com, BOLIN, /the-kind-city, to, I guess he'll send people copies. So, but yeah, I'm really liking this. They're a local band, and it actually got me thinking, them and Run at the Dog. And Marshall was in a band called A Series of Clips and Beeps. I think it's Clicks and Beeps before he was in Run at the Dog. That was sort of in the similar vein. Kind of, like XTC, and although his vocals have points remind me a little bit of Mike Patton. He seems like he's a Mike Patton, a Faith No More fan. I remember my friend John and I used to see them at this little cafe called EP Atelier years ago, like well over 10 years ago. But I remember thinking there's a little bit of a Faith No More thing in some of his vocals. But yeah, The Kind City, one of the better local bands. I mean, they should do a show. Now they're called Secondhand Dan. They were Scalise, who I saw open for the Family Crest, or even Kimono. They should do a show with them. Or some of the others, of course, like Lato and Wright and Galactic Cover. That's what I was trying to get at, is that I did a blog entry many years ago about prog rock, art rock in Minnesota. I should do a video on that, like a video just talking about a show. Maybe I might just do like a top 20 or 25 albums. And I've consolidated all my local CDs, and I could do easily 25, just to, the weird thing is a lot of the people that like Bubble Math and that might know Run at the Dog and some of his bands don't know Lato and Wright and Greg Harris and Galactic Cowboy Orchestra. It's weird. It's weird how that you can be into similar style but not have fans, even the bands, be aware of each other. But then again, people that make music don't necessarily listen to music that's like them always. So the second band, but yeah, I thought they were really good. The one thing they did do, I was just going to say one more thing about The Kind City. After every song, they were waving. It was funny. I don't know if it was trying to get people's attention not to be on their phones or just say, hi, bye, how you doing? It was just funny. The whole band got up and did that. And they have a connection, too, because Bubble Math did open for, and they have a relationship with Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. And the first, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, the second band was this band called Dead Rider, I believe. And I'm not sure where they're from, like Chicago or something like that. Dead Rider band. Let's see. And yeah, they're from Chicago. So I don't know if they have a connection to that band Cheer Accent, which the tour, they're on tour with Sleepytime Gorilla Museum for this. I don't know if Cheer Accent, I guess, who's from Chicago, is playing with them, and they kind of fit in that sort of avant-garde rock style to some degree. Prog folks really like, I know, Cheer Accent. Anyway, I liked Dead Rider for the most part. I mean, it was very groove-oriented. The vocals were, it's almost like dark wave at points. Vocals were not, he wasn't yelling. It was kind of yelling, but it wasn't death metal or anything like that. It was more like groove rock with synthesizers, with dark wave synthesizers at points. It was just a trio, and I don't know. I'd like to maybe listen to some of their music, their studio music, see how I might feel more about it. But they've been around since like 2009, so yeah. I mean, I don't. They were, of the three bands, they were probably the one that engaged me the least, but I still liked them. I mean, it was unusual. All the guitar parts were just like so groovy, like not like Pantera exactly, but in that kind of King's X vein to some small degree. And with the keyboards and I can't remember what the third member, if he plays bass. Yeah, Todd. I mean, the guy looks. It was weird. He looks pretty. Doesn't look young. I don't even know the previous the singer Todd Rittman, who played keyboards. He went from keyboards to guitar, like back and forth. But Andrea, yeah, they had a female. I guess it was a female, maybe a female keyboard player in Matt Espy. Anyway, so on to Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. A couple of things I need to just say. I've known about them. I saw them it was May 30th, so right before Memorial Day or right after, whatever that was. 2002, and it was not that long before I'd even discovered Bubble Math. But I mean, Bubble Math I'd gotten into maybe 6 months to a year before that, and I'd had, when I was doing KFEI radio, Kai and might have been Blake or Jay, two of the members of Bubble Math, not the lead singer, not the drummer, joined me and my friend Creighton, and I think John even may have been. We interviewed Kai, and we were talking about a lot of stuff. We were talking about Near Fest. It was right around the time that they were gonna show up and go to Near Fest just like we did. Bubble Math, and I was, their album had just come out and everything, but they did this show with Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. They were like big admirers of Sleepytime Gorilla Museum. Maybe their previous band, I was just reading about that a little bit. It's called Idiot Flesh. And the show itself, Bubble Math, was fun. That was back in 2002 at the Lab, which became Station 4 in downtown St. Paul. And then I liked moments. I remember the violinist Carla, what's her last name? Carla Kilstead. I remember she broke like a string on her violin, and she wasn't like able to fully play it at one point at the rest of the show. I don't know what she did. I forget. I just remember that. But I also distinctly remember their drummer playing on a trash can. So, but that was, and I liked them. They were unusual to say the least. They were heavy at points, and I was into prog metal, but I wasn't extreme metal, death metal, not much. I don't know if I'd started to listen to Opeth at that point, maybe a little bit, but and so, okay, I liked them. The other, I was associated. And then they end up playing at Near Fest, which I found to be very, pretty surprising that Near Fest would book them because of the extreme nature of their music and metal. Near Fest was a Northeast Art Rock Festival in Bethel, Pennsylvania. Didn't really do a lot of metal. Prog metal and Dream Theater were popular at that point, even in the early 2000s. But they were there, and a lot of people liked them, and they kind of started to grow in popularity. Myself, though, I kind of just dismissed them. I didn't think I hated them. I just dismissed them ironically, and but I know I sort of knew they were active, and I had this friend of mine named Marla who she like promoted at least one or two different shows that were brought here. And they just had this cult following among some different people, and like people that like Mr. Bungle, because their style is it's avant-garde, it's just weird and theatrical, and um, what would you call exhibitionist in some ways, or yeah, so. But they played here, and they did tours throughout the 2000s, up until like 2010 maybe. They played here 3 times, and I didn't go to any of them. I was looking at my concert history, and I could have potentially gone to them, but their fan base, I guess, kind of grew, and they became this cult band, as weird as unusual as they were. But I always knew about them. I'd even like pass news along, and the funny thing is, Unexpect, and I got into extreme metal around 2007, like Diablo Swing Orchestra, who I couldn't get into, and I got into later. And there's this band called The Stratosphere, who I got into a little bit. I still would like to go back and check more of their music out. And even some of the other bands, like the Red Paintings, is the weird thing is. Seeing them last night, and their costuming and the face paint stuff definitely reminded me of my experience seeing the Red Paintings and watching that documentary. Where Red Paintings wear like tunics and like wolf fur hats, and you name it. They dressed up in body paint and stuff like that. It was very reminiscent of that. But so their new album, I know they broke up in effect, and then they had a new album and a Kickstarter and a tour. People were wanting them to come back for ages. I know like Nils had done other stuff. It's like, is SGM ever going to come back? And it was really a big deal to a lot of people, and they fulfilled the Kickstarter both to fund the album and to do this tour. So it tells you the dedication and passion of a lot of fans that love them. So the new album I've listened to about over two or three different listenings, maybe about half of it, and I like moments of it. The thing is, like with Unexpect and with Sicketh is the other one. I got into them too. Sicketh and Unexpect, they have these crazy fun moments that they lead to with all the chaos and the weirdness. SGM, at least if it's there, it ends up being more patience is required. And it's so overtly dissonant. But yeah, they predate both those bands. Well, they don't predate Unexpect necessarily, but Sicketh and Diablo Swing Orchestra they do. So they could have had an influence on them. I mean, they were influenced by Mr. Bungle and a lot of that quote-unquote avant-garde, rock and opposition or anti-pop music. And they did, they played about, I was counting 4 or 5 of the new songs off the new album. So, at least half their set was probably the new album. Salamander and Two Worlds. Is this the new one? Of Last Human Being? Yeah, Of the Last Human Being it's called. It came out literally 3 weeks ago or something. They did Hush Hush, Burn Into Light, Old Gray Heron. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the extent of the set list that they did. But the Salamander song was interesting. I mean, they had some guy on stage, so I didn't even get into the whole, what the shot, they went on around 11 o'clock. There's other details that I need to add about, but the whole set, they went on, no, it went on about 10 o'clock, rather, a little before 10 o'clock, but, so they played maybe less than an hour and a half, but over an hour. They had some guy doing performance art, dancing, and they're all dressed in what was, I believe he said, parachutes. They went to a parachute store to buy this. It's and they, Nils, the singer, had, face paint. I think they all maybe had face paint. They had 2 drummers, but the one drummer was going between his drums and the xylophone. He was actually, push come to shove, if I was saying the most impressive musician, he was. There were points where he was playing polyrhythms that was just crazy, and it's almost like he was playing a different piece than the rest of the band. Their other drummer was good. He played trumpet, I want to say, and some other stuff. He was talking about Captain Beefheart at the beginning of the show. The Nils, of course, sings, plays guitar, and plays flute. Toward the latter half of the show, something happened with this flute, like the valves got stuck or something. They're like, they wouldn't have a flute, borrow a flute for the rest of our tour. I don't know. It was too bad. Yeah, because they had their kind of tull elements or whatever with the flute parts. Of course, Carla, the violinist, and it was singing. Her vocal style, it just hit me. I was listening to some of their stuff the last few days. Reminds me of Bjork a little bit in some ways. Yeah, I mean, it was an experience. But the other thing that definitely was unusual, and I guess maybe, I mean, there's many. They didn't play on trash cans at this show, but they had like people go up on stage, and like I was sitting upstairs, and so I didn't even get on the fact that I went to this show. My friend Lee bought like a whole table, so like 4 seats at the tables upstairs at the Fine Line, because at the Fine Line, I didn't even mention that. And then he decided he wanted to go to Cruise to the Edge. I don't know how he made this decision and realized it was going to conflict with the Sleepytime Gorilla Museum show. So he sent me a message about a week ago saying, do you want to go? You can have my tickets. You can have my table. And I said, sure. But I wouldn't have normally gone because, like I said, my interest has been just sort of like being aware of them as opposed to really listening to their music regularly and paying attention. I knew they had come back, but the belief that, I can definitely say that they're not compared like avant-garde Prog or whatever, Unexpect, Sicketh, Diablo Swing Orchestra. I prefer all 3 of those bands. Subterranean Masquerade would be sort of in that vein. I prefer all those bands to them just as a sort of a memorable, melodic, favorite, go-to, re-listenability kind of thing. But it's, in fairness, I haven't like given maybe enough time to their albums in full. I just am always getting the dissonant element. The vocal style of Nils, he sings like, it's a little bit like Gildenlow when he gets extreme. He's not a death metal vocalist, but he's not a hardcore. He's not doing like post-hardcore screaming either. It's kind of like a slightly lighter version of Michael Ackerfeld or Gildenlow in that kind of vein where you're not singing clean. He does some clean vocals, but he almost reminds me of like Neil Haverty from Bruce Peninsula a little bit. Is like deeper, kind of gruff, because he's kind of sounds like Tom Waits. And who's the other singer I was thinking? He kind of channels a little bit of Peter Steele, maybe. I forget. But, the thing is, okay, so they had, like, in the encore, before the encore, at one point, they're doing this song called Sleep something. Sleepytime, go figure. Sleep is Wrong. And, like, okay, I was at the table up in the balcony by myself, straight back. And so there are 3 other seats that were in there. Like, a friend of mine named Andy was there, but he was sitting a couple tables down. And there's someone I was contacting on Facebook that he was probably there, but he never was able to go upstairs. I don't know. We weren't able to communicate enough. I didn't have enough time. But, so this, like, woman and, like, maybe her husband and their kid, and I think it was a girl, but I could be wrong. It could have been a boy, were there. And at one point, they went downstairs and went on stage. And I'm wondering if the kid might be, like, the violinist singer Carla's child. This kid was like 10, 11 years old maybe. And this is like at 11 o'clock at night. Weird. So weird. But right like before the encore or something like that, like after they went off stage, they have this guitar and like an amp. And I'm like, what are they doing with this sitting up on the balcony on my table? I didn't make a fuss out of them sitting there. It was the end of the show. No one was going to... It didn't matter to me. I mean, but... So then, during the encore, they play this song, Sleep is Wrong, and the whole band, like, act like they're going to sleep like this. And then, this little amplifier is put right in front of the bars on the fence, in the balcony, and this kid is playing the guitar right next to me. And everyone's, like looking, turning around, looking up, like, where's that coming from? Right where I was sitting. It was surreal. It was kind of surreal, but, I don't know. It's like, they must have been affiliated with the band. I don't think they just brought in their guitar and asked, can we play guitar with... No, that didn't happen. Maybe it was a Kickstarter campaign fulfillment for the parents. I just was thinking it probably connected to the band because the fact that it's that late, and they went on stage before and everything like that, holding up this sign. But Yeah, it was bizarre. Again, performance art, part just kind of crazy avant-garde dissonant musicianship. I mean, there was one piece that very, very much sounded like it was borrowing from that riff from little interval pattern from I think it's Stepping Stones from Mahavishnu Orchestra. That do no 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 no. But I don't know if it was on violin. I can't figure out the song on the list. It might have been the violin or the guitar. I can't remember now. But I was like, that I know that. It sounds like Stepping Stones or something from Mahavishnu. That Mahavishnu part. But yeah, I mean, Salamander and Two Worlds. I mean, some of the Powerless. They did a song called Ambugaton, if that's pronounced right. I mean, they're crazy. They're weird. It's just it's unusual to think that a band that unusual has this much of a following. These are people that hate pop music, maybe. I mean, I can understand because Mr. Bungle gained a lot of popularity, obviously, once Mike Patton joined Faith No More. But Mr. Bungle has their fan base. And weird music, I guess, has become more acceptable to some degree. I mean, I think about that movie with Adam Goldberg, Untitled, where he's doing sampling of, like, leather, like, pants and stuff. It's like, that's what this kind of was. It wasn't quite that far out, but, I mean, yeah, I mean, they were talking, telling stories to the crowd and stuff. It wasn't like they didn't have stage presence. But their characters, although I'll admit, I almost kind of picture like he's like a Buckethead thing where he wouldn't talk, or like the guys from Daft Punk. He wouldn't talk to the crowd or anything. No, he was, Nils was, shooting the shit with the crowd afterwards. I ran into Dave from Fairly Secret Music, which was great. I'm not surprised he was there. He's talking about doing his own music, and I also learned something about bubble math. It's interesting how Kai probably would have been there, because I mean, obviously Marshall's band, and he probably is aware of the Kind City, because Blake from Bubble Math's in that band too, but Kai wasn't there, and Kai, the keyboard player from Bubble Math, he did some vocals at one point, but he moved. I don't know, within the last year, he's not living in Minnesota, so I don't know what that means for the future of Bubble Math. He's living out in Seattle. They could still record, of course, but Dave told me that he'd like to get Kai to maybe play on one of his, because he's got his own music, but yeah, it was a great show. I mean, I don't know how much, like, if they came again, if I would necessarily pursue to see them. I don't know. This might be the only time because it was Kickstarter funded. I don't know if this is going to be like an ongoing thing. We had Caddisfly come back in 2015 and they never did any touring. So, but this band has got this rabid cult following. It's weird. And their albums, I don't know how much I'm going to listen to their albums. But I think at least the new album, it's called Of the Last Human Being, I should give a little more time to. The first song, Salamander and Two Worlds, they played last night. I liked it on Spotify. Now they're using like a checkmark versus a heart on Spotify, but added to my 2024 playlist. But I think it maybe part of it is just it's mood music. But I feel like even Sicketh and Unexpect is mood music to some degree as well. But there's just more reward. The reward is more fulfilling. I don't know. I mean, they have their prog elements. They have some subtle harmonies and stuff, and some just straight, more like ballady kind of pieces with flute and stuff that aren't going so odd and extreme. And they have some crazy musicianship. That's what I appreciate about something like Unexpected and Sicketh as well, in between the Buried to me to some degree. I just don't know if the dissonance and sort of the sort of vibe and aura of what they're kind of coming across with it being dark and life is black, life is the world is black, the world is gray, or the world is all minor keys, and it's not something that I can find myself getting attached to regularly. But I totally appreciate their originality, uniqueness, and some of their moments at least. So what do you think of the new Sleepytime Gorilla Museum album, and what do you think? Have you seen them live? Have you seen them on this tour? I mean, the Sleepytime Gorilla Museum, knowing my luck, it'd be like The Warning, or I'll tag this on the YouTube video, and then I'll get like 17 comments from SGM fans saying like, you need to go back and listen to that stuff a little more now, because you don't know what you're talking about. This band's the greatest thing ever since sliced bread, and they feel about SGM the way I feel about Kevin Gilbert or whatever, Small League Sink Ships, and I get it, so I totally respect that, and I do like moments of their music. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.